Shall we see what you look like?
Wrong side out.
Don't touch me.
Why are you here?
Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 just released, and the internet's reaction is pretty mixed. One of the most viral examples is Markiplier completely crashing out at the game. He just seems apathetic towards it, completely jaded, and just annoyed at most of the experience.
Oh my god. Enough! We're the game of chase sequences. We are the chase sequence game. A chase sequence is not the time to introduce a new mechanic.
Now, even though the game on Steam is sitting with mostly positive reviews, there's been loads of people talking about the character designs, the cutscenes, and how great everything is choreographed. I agree with that. There are some things about this chapter that I really genuinely do like, and some of it is the strongest in the series, but there is a glaring problem with the game that we're now in Chapter 5, and I still feel that this game, for the most part, is this revolving door of being introduced to characters that are brand new. They got great designs. They'll be there for about 20 minutes, and then they're usually killed off, never to be seen or referenced again. And then on the other hand, you'll have characters that have been hyped up for chapters, like, for example, the infamous prototype. And don't get me wrong, that reveal was absolutely phenomenal. And again, you only really experience being with the prototype for about 5 minutes in a game that takes most people, if they're trying to be completionists, around 5 hours. One thing I have noticed about Poppy Playtime is the fan base can be absolutely brutal. When Markiplier criticized the game, there were people even turning around and saying, well, that film you made, Iron Lung, that kind of sucked. So you don't really have the right to criticize my video game. So I want to try and briefly go over the lore from what I remember. I do want to say I might be getting some of the details inaccurate here. It's just what I've found through playing through the games and watching various videos trying to collect the lore. But obviously, I didn't want to just make a quick video being like, the game's bad because, yeah, it just is okay. But the context here is really important to then talk about the good things about Chapter 5 and the stuff I really didn't like as well. So there was a man called Elliot Ludwig. Imagine him as like Walt Disney or something. And he founded this company in the 1930s called Playtime Co. And his main goal was to make children very happy with the product of toys. And then in the 1950s, the company Playtime Co. created something called the Poppy doll, basically saying it was the first truly intelligent doll, something AI joke here. That was their biggest toy, and then it became a household name. But despite that, their most successful toy was actually something called Huggy Wuggy, you know, the big blue thing that you see all over Twitter. That was made in 1984, and one of the reasons why that's basically the mascot of this entire franchise is because back in the first chapter, which was totally free, by the way, that's one of the reasons why this series is so popular, because the first entry was free to play. It basically acted as a launcher that you could use to purchase additional chapters as DLC and then use that to play it. So Huggy Wuggy was made in 84, and then he had like a partner called Kissy Missy that was made in 85. That's the purple one that you've probably seen as well on Twitter. And you've probably seen the viral clip of Queso having the quietest reaction possible when Kissy Wissy and Huggy Wuggy meet up with each other.
Something bad's about to happen.
But after making these models, the company started to struggle financially. And then there was this new character called Dr. Harley Sawyer, and he takes over the company and saves it from complete financial ruin. He's basically the character you are meant to absolutely despise. You'll even see small flavor text on whiteboards throughout the game that just have notes saying, yeah, this Sawyer guy, he's not very nice. And he's basically the overarching antagonist of the entire series. He's the fella that you saw in one chapter that had the TV head on.
Actually, it's a computer monitor. It's not a TV head.
So as a child, Sawyer, the TV head man, was actually in the Young Geniuses program that was founded by Elliot Ludwig. He excelled, he did really well, but then he was removed for a lack of humility. Basically, he came across as your typical Patrick Bateman type. He really excelled at what he did, but had little to no empathy. But as an adult, he was hired back to Playtime Co. by someone called Leith Pierre on the 15th of January, 1990. This was to join something called the Special Projects Division, and this is where he gained the nickname of the Doctor. Again, all those notes you find on whiteboards and various notes of employees hating this guy. And this is where they started work on something called the Bigger Bodies Initiative. So this Bigger Bodies Initiative, which sounds like a pyro joke, was basically a really unethical experimentation on humans, mainly orphan children. And the bodies of these subjects, when they were used with these poppy flowers, basically they believed had life-altering properties. And then this would bring about these like organisms that were modeled after the toys produced by Playtime Co. Now the poppy flowers are important because they make this like poppy gel, and it's basically a mixture that was created by Playtime Co. that could restore things, it could give life to things, but it was also incredibly dangerous. That's why in Chapter 5 you see it absolutely everywhere, because I don't know what a good comparison is here. Gears of War, right? In Gears of War, there was resource wars. The planet was basically dying. One resource they had that could make the cogs, I guess, the humans a lot of money was something called emulsion. And emulsion you would find in caves. It was this glowing liquid that you could utilize, but, you know, going near it, touching it was incredibly dangerous. I think the poppy gel is kind of similar in this way.
Hey, Marcus, how much do you think all that emulsion's worth? I don't think I can count that high.
So around 1990, the company would have a major success. They'd have various creatures made, like, for example, Boxy Boo, Pianosaurus. If you remember, Pianosaurus was hyped up as well in the promotional material. And then in Chapter 4, he appears for like 5 seconds, and then he's eaten by Doughy. And also, Pianosaurus is an Easter egg in Chapter 5. If you find these hand scanners, I found some during my playthrough, but not all of them. If you scan all of them, Pianosaurus appears, and he does a little dance where he includes a dab, unironically, which is a great foreshadowing to some of the problems I have with this latest chapter. You had Yarnaby that was made, and then Huggy Wuggy, and they were described as the ideal experiment. So in June 1992, which was just 2 years after Huggy Wuggy was created, he managed to escape through an open delivery bay door, and then into the open, where he would basically kill around 5 people, but maybe 11 people, because I think 6 of them were declared missing. And then Harley Sawyer, the Patrick Bateman TV headman, he was eventually turned into Experiment 1354, where his organs were locked inside this giant metal container, but his consciousness would be able to actually go all over the factory so that the scientists could still use his knowledge. So basically think of him almost as like an SCP-079. He's basically stuck inside technology, but he can move around at a rapid pace, and he has all of his intelligence intact. And then on August the 8th, 1995, not to be confused with the Bite of 87, a lot of these creatures broke containment, basically killed and ate pretty much everyone. This was called the Hour of Joy, and this was masterminded by the company's experiment, which was 1006, called the Prototype. Again, that one that was hyped up throughout the whole game. Again, I will be talking about the Prototype in detail, don't worry. I just feel like I gotta flesh out the lore here a little bit for context. So again, the lore here gets pretty complex. There was this other faction of toys that weren't inherently wanting to get revenge. They just wanted to live, basically, called like the Good Toys. And they managed to find this place called Safe Haven that was basically a bunker for the employees to hide in the case of a catastrophe. And then 10 years after the Hour of Joy, in 2005, the player character, who we know still basically nothing about, which is really annoying, he receives this VHS tape and a letter prompting him to find the flower, which again initiates the chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And there are going to be more chapters, even though the story was apparently meant to end at 5. It is confusing. I will get into that. So going through the Poppy Playtime chapters, because I have played all of them now. Obviously, I do want to give credit to the developers, because, you know, if you compare Chapter 1, which was basically just a playable teaser at this point to build up the fan base and to get people playing it, because again, it was free to play. It was a launcher, basically. The entirety of Chapter 1 is only about half an hour long, really. Comparing the visuals on that to, like, you know, Chapter 5 or even 4 or 3, it's basically night and day. There was a huge improvement there. And then immediately when you jump to Chapter 2, the game is like 2.5, 3 hours long. And who can forget Chapter 2 as well, having the infamous voice acting of Jacksepticeye as well. I am definitely not annoyed that I wasn't reached out by Mob Games to have a cameo.
Oh, not at all, sir. I was heading home for the day when my apars realised that I left me bloody wallet in the cafeteria. So I'm running through the lobby, and that's when I see it. a mop handle lodged under the innovation wing gate.
Chapter 2 also introduced Mommy Longlegs as an antagonist that everyone was basically simping over. And when Mommy Longlegs was defeated, you saw that her body was actually being dragged away. Again, that was basically the first direct instance the player had outside of collectibles that, okay, there's like a bigger bad guy here, and he's utilizing all the previous enemies that we've defeated, or the bosses, to make themselves stronger. And then Chapter 3 came out, and this is actually when the game had a huge step up. You could tell that the graphics were actually considerably improved. The game was a little bit longer as well. There was more time, you know, actually speaking to other characters. And then it basically had one of the best antagonists of the series, in my opinion, Catnap. And I say that because Catnap was basically aura farming. The character design is haunting, all the red gas everywhere that basically is just, imagine Scarecrow's nightmare toxin, even though, again, that is introduced in Chapter 5, and I have a problem with that, which I will get into. And I think this is where mob games found a really good balance with having bad guys that were vocal, like Mommy Longlegs, but then also having characters that were villains, or I guess misunderstood villains, and they had no dialogue whatsoever, because they didn't need to. You saw the character, and you're like, okay, this thing is a monster, it can't be reasoned with. And this is also the chapter where Poppy, the little porcelain doll, and Kissy Missy also got a lot more screen time to kind of, you know, flesh them out as well. Again, you still basically were watching a film. I think that's the best comparison I can say, because as the player, and I think this is a decision they've made on purpose, but you never really feel like you're actually involved with the world around you. You are just witnessing events happening. I mean, you know, I'm not saying the protagonist has to be voiced or has to have any personality. A great example is Half-Life 2. You know, I played that game as a kid. Gordon Freeman says nothing apart from, I guess, if you walk into fire and he goes like, that's it. That's the only dialogue he has. But because characters would speak to you so much, they would interact with you. They would also react to the things you were doing in the game world. Like if you picked up a can and you threw it, or you did something that, you know, wasn't part of the story, people would comment on that. So even though, you know, Gordon Freeman, completely voiceless, could not ever speak to women a day in his life, you still felt like you were actually directly involved in the story. But in Poppy Playtime, the main character, for the most part, is just referred to as like the player, I guess, by the community, or like the butcher as well, because he's going around like killing other people. Again, I know a lot of people have theorized this. I think the big reveal here, honestly, is just going to be that Poppy was a bad guy and was playing you the entire time. I know that's like the most cliche thing imaginable, but again, future chapters like Chapter 4 and even Chapter 5, a lot of the bad guys, supposed bad guys that you meet, just seem to blame you for everything. They always say, it's your fault, we had a nice thing. You know, it's this conversation of Mike with Walter of like, we had a good thing, you stupid son of a bitch. We had Poppy, we had playtime, we had an hour of joy, and it all ran like clockwork. You could have shut your mouth, OF forward, and made as much clip farming as you ever needed. It was perfect, but no, you just had to blow it up. You and your pride and your ego. You just had to be the nameless Roblox default character. If you'd done your job, known your place, we'd all be fine right now. Now, Traversal is a pretty big thing in the Poppy Playtime franchise. Obviously, you've got the two little hands, the blue one and the red one, and it's like, whoa, one of them can open blue doors and one of them can open red doors. That's insane. Obviously, they did evolve this. I think Chapter 3 actually took the best approach, because I think that was the first one where you actually got a flare gun. Again, it wasn't really a gun to defend yourself. We're not talking like the revolver or the shotgun in Amnesia the Bunker, but it still felt like you actually had an impact on the game world. You weren't, you know, it broke up puzzles, chase sequence, cutscene. Puzzles, chase sequence, cutscene. I mean, during the chase sequences, you now had a means to actually kind of fight back. I mean, yeah, I remember you were just shooting the little critters and then they'd run away in the holes. It wasn't like anything insane, but at least you felt like you were doing something apart from just going A to B. And Chapter 3 ended with Catnap being again taken by the prototype, which is something that they did at the end of Chapter 2. Again, hyping up this big final boss character that's utilizing all of your enemies against you. I do also want to say, by the way, the finale for Chapter 3 was so painful. I remember streaming that and dying so many times because I had no idea what I was doing.
You did not teach me the mechanics of this game. I'm putting in the battery! I'm putting in the battery. How do I shut this one off? How do I... Great mechanics. Great mechanics. Oh, we did it. Oh, I think we did it.
Works on the fake cats. One is real, my king. Good luck.
Did we do it? it was a cutscene. It was a cutscene. It was a cutscene. It was a cutscene. What?
And then chapter 4 rolled around, and you can really see where the production value of this game was going up and up. You had these like, you know, live action intros, these like kind of parody kids commercials, which was a huge step up from like chapter 1 and chapter 2, because for the most part, you just had, oh, let's find a VHS tape, put it in. And then it's a VHS tape. You're meant to see something visual, and it would basically just be a still image and the equivalent of a BioShock audio log, which again is fine. It's serviceable, but it shows in future chapters how much they actually cared about the direction. Like, for example, in chapter 4, you have the introduction of Doughy. He got his own little introduction as like a, you know, a character that you could buy in the intro, which helped flesh out the world a lot more as well. Chapter 4 was decent as well. Honestly, that was probably the most scariest chapter for me, atmosphere-wise, in the entire franchise, because it was very kind of moment to moment. I think this is one of the first instances as well where you were seeing actual human corpses and just being reminded that you're not just running through a house of horrors. There were people here that actually died. It also introduced Yarnby, this weird kind of dog, rainbow dog, and its face would split open, very similar to the dogs from the kennels in The Thing, which again is like one of the best films, in my opinion, ever made, just for its practical effects and stuff. So seeing homage played to that was really cool. And obviously chapter 4 as well had the introduction of Dr. Sawyer as the main villain, and that was really cool because it was actually someone that had a personal vendetta against you. It felt personal. This is someone who was talking to you as opposed to, you know, just going bleh, or like screaming at you. Again, the catnap aura, it's unmatched, but still, this was a really cool change of pace. Chapter 4 as well tried to flesh the game out a bit more because you actually went to the safe haven, the bunker where the humans were meant to hide, but obviously they all got killed. So all the kind of good toys that haven't lost their minds yet are hiding down there. And, you know, just seeing them stood around, some of them will have small conversations with each other. It was kind of cool to see this world get fleshed out a bit more. That's one of the small instances of you not feeling like you're just going through moment to moment gameplay of like scares and puzzles and, you know, jump on top of this box, but don't crouch jump because you can't. It was a moment like this where you felt like there was an actual world going on around you, not just this slideshow of like horrors gameplay. And that flare gun I mentioned earlier, chapter 4 actually utilized that because you would use it to beat Doughy, the final boss, which again began that trend of enemies saying to you, you ruined everything, it's all your fault. And the ending of chapter 4 leads with Huggy Wuggy, who kind of catches you, and then chapter 5 immediately begins with him chasing you. So again, you're already beginning with another chase sequence. And it was nice to see Huggy Wuggy kind of return, I guess. I mean, I know he's the mascot for the series, but he's not really a main character by any means. Now, one thing the later chapters of Poppy Playtime liked to use was like smaller animals as enemies, because you couldn't just be chased by a 9-foot tall monster every 5 minutes. So in chapter 5, they introduced these things called the Outimals, and these are experiments on the Wrong Side Outimals toy line that were created by the prototype. Again, Outimals, get it, because they're inside out. The problem is, within the first 5 minutes of chapter 5, you lose everything. You lose your arms, you lose all the upgrades that you've had, basically throughout the entire 4 chapters, which isn't a bad thing. There's a lot of games that I shill where, you know, in later chapters, you lose everything. Cry of Fear is a great example here. A lot of survival horrors do this. They strip you of your entire inventory because maybe you've been stacked up too much. Maybe the developers made the choice of, you know, seeing what they could do if you were basically put back down to ground zero. But obviously that means the flare gun is completely removed from the game and you never get it back. You never get it back. And that was one of the small things that I liked as an item you could use. Instead, they replaced it with this little star that you can pick up that has a flashlight attached to it. So instead of shooting the enemies away with a flare gun, you're now just shining your light on them until they run away. But the thing is, these Outimals in the opening bits of the chapter, and then they're basically never really seen again. I mean, you see them throughout the chapter, but they're not really as much of a problem as they are in the first, you know, half an hour of chapter 5. They basically camp in corners. You might be able to see them in the dark, but they basically jump scare you. They go, but they don't kill you. I mean, they'll probably kill you if you walk into them 4 or 5 times, but it's almost like the developers knew, hey, we've set these enemies up as like guardrails to make sure you don't go into areas you're not meant to until you get the flashlight to be able to scare them off. So yeah, wait, and they're in the dark and there's not really much way to tell. This is kind of a bad idea. Maybe we should redesign the area. No, instead, let's just warn the player by having them take increasing amounts of damage. And you could tell the developers knew that this was an oversight and they corrected it by giving you multiple chances, because when you very rarely include these animals again later on in open areas with good lighting, they just instantly kill you, sometimes without any sound for some reason.
Yo, leave that dinosaur alone. Okay, so you don't react to the light? What? And why were you an instant kill? No sound effect as well, by the way. Just nothing.
As like kind of a first in Poppy Playtime, I'm sure they've done this before, but it's the only time I can recall. Instead of being outright killed by an enemy, you get Call of Duty jelly screen. So when they jump up and attack you, you don't die immediately. And it's not like, you know, one chance, okay, fair enough, leave. Second chance, you're dead. You can do this like up to 4 times until they actually kill you. So it doesn't really feel like you're under any kind of stress or being threatened. It's just like, okay, I need to come back here later, which is not the atmosphere. You don't want to feel frustration in a survival horror game. You want to feel tense. You want to feel on edge. They also introduce Lily Lovebraids. Now, I might be wrong here, but I don't think there's been any direct mention of Lily Lovebraids in any previous chapter. And this is one of the biggest problems I had with the chapter because, again, it's feeding into that revolving door of like, here's a new character that we made. It looks really cool. You like it? You're going to see her for about like 30 minutes. And then never see her again. We might bring her back in another chapter. Basically, she was this teacher at the Institute of Poppy Playtime called Gracie Green. And her cutscenes, which are all live action, by the way, are absolutely phenomenal. Like, she has done such a good job with what she was given here. Honestly, I hate to admit it, she kind of reminded me of like Miranda Sings as well at some points.
If you feel like you're one of the ugly people in the world, you're making other people feel prettier. So literally stop complaining because that was a gift from God because you're literally helping people feel prettier because of how ugly you are.
The toxic gossip train.
So she was killed during the Hour of Joy, assumedly, and then she was dissected and then turned into this toy Lily Lovebraids. That's basically this doll who doesn't have a nose, which I really can't get over.
She has no nose.
And she has control of her hair. She can use it as like, you know, tendrils and stuff like that to catch you. Now, her setup from Gracie to Lily was really cool. I did like that. And again, the fact that they included live action, a real life person, was insane. I mean, there's also some really good sequences in chapter 5 where you have flashbacks, or I guess dreams or visions or whatever you want to call it, where you play as Huggy Wuggy. And these are very short instances. There's not really much you can do in them apart from like grab shapes and put them away. But that was also another really cool way to flesh out the world of Poppy Playtime. It was a bit disappointing though. Again, it did feed into the kind of you're just watching a film and not really doing anything because, you know, you'll play as Huggy, picking up toys. You hear them screaming, being like, no, please don't do this. Please look like I'm a real person. And you feel like a piece of shit and you have to do it. And then you've got Gracie in the background on the monitor going, go on, Huggy Wuggy. I know you want to do it. Put them in the box.
No, please tell me who I am. Huggy, please place the toy in the bad toy box.
No. Holy repeated dialogue. Okay, fine. I'm sorry. Holy shit. You just heard it get ground up.
And it's unsettling, you know, like you're forced to do it. You don't have a choice. And I know that a lot of people have a problem with these kinds of video games like Spec Ops The Line, where it's like, you know, in Spec Ops The Line, there's this scene that people argue about a lot where you launch white phosphorus on what you think are attacking troops. And then you find out later on that it was just civilians. You bomb civilians. And there's this cutscene where, you know, the audio drones out with this ringing. You feel like a piece of shit. But then you got to ask yourself, well, I mean, I had to do that. You forced me to do that. There is no other option. But I think with stuff like that, the first instance of when it happens is like, oh shit, this is really bad. But obviously on repeat playthroughs, or if you watch a YouTube video and you have the hindsight, then it's kind of like, wait a minute, I'm not meant to feel bad. You forced me to do this. But I think it was a cool addition. But there was this one bit where Huggy Wuggy breaks containment, and you can really tell how just the execution wasn't there.
Stop! Oh god, it's getting loose. I don't want to have to hurt you. Someone get me back up. Conditioning.
You could so easily run out. You could run away, bro. Like, why is he just like default posing? You could leave.
Like there was a cutscene where you chase this worker down a hallway and it looks like you have control. You can see the crosshair and stuff. You'd be really fooled thinking I was actually playing the game, but I wasn't. It was just a cutscene. I didn't even have control of the camera where Huggy Wuggy was looking.
I've got no control over this. Oh, dude.
They've got some really good ideas here, but so much of it is just on rails constantly. And also about Lily Lovebraids, again, her introduction's great. Her entire area was really interesting, despite the fact I basically had a game-breaking bug where she wanted me to retrieve toys, and then when I put one down, you were actually meant to place it down with your hand, like you're grabbing something, not press G to drop it from the inventory. And then when I dropped it on the table, it basically forced me to reload a save.
Did I soft lock? Okay, I hope I didn't soft lock. I can't pick it up. Okay, well, have I got to reload a save?
On top of other game-breaking bugs as well, I had a box that just got completely stuck into the ground to the point that I could not get it out and had to reload a save. Again, this isn't game-breaking stuff. I mean, it is, but like, it's not like I'm going to stop playing the game because of it. It's going to be like, you know, I reload a save and then I lose 3 to 4 minutes of progress, but it still obviously does kill the flow of the game.
Is it stuck? No, it's stuck. Oh my god, it's clipped into the ground. I'm not loading a save. Come on, please. That's fully clipped in. Okay, great. So I can... Okay, this could work. It's going to take about 5 business days. Oh my god. Yep. I'm loading a quick save. Amazing! Amazing!
But there's this sequence later on with Lily Lovebraids where you're meant to play red light, green light from Squid Game. And it's okay. It's serviceable. I guess it kind of beats having a chase scene, even though 5 minutes later she does end up having a chase scene with you. Because obviously, of course, despite the fact that you escape her, she catches you in a cutscene. I've always had a problem with cutscenes, not even in Poppy Playtime, but just in general. You know how like in video games, how your character will tank like 200 hits, but then in a cutscene, they get shot in the shoulder and they're like, oh! You know, it's almost like cutscene reality is a completely different reality from in the game. But yeah, she chases you during this scene, and this is one of the problems I had, because again, it feels like you're given multiple ways to escape her, but you're not. You have to go on one preset path, and if you make a wrong choice, it's instant death. Like, the developers basically coded it, so if you go anywhere apart from this straight A to B path, she will catch you. Dude, you can even miss a jump and fall into the abyss. You don't die from fall damage. You die from her somehow TPing right in front of you, like anime style, nothing personal, kid, and then ending your life. Like, not even the fall will catch you because she'll already spawn on top of you.
Maybe I'll just go down this way. What? Just TPs! Not even like a full damage death.
Now, there are friendly characters in Chapter 5 who we've never seen before. Again, they were probably referenced, but this is the first time you actually see them. First one is Giblet or Giblet. That basically looks like my furry character if you put him in the washing machine on 500 degrees for about 4 to 5 days straight.
He was actually... Okay, that one got me.
You're the one they've been talking about.
He looks like if you asked someone to draw Ratchet from Ratchet and Clank, but he had like severe leprosy. Like, I'm talking like King Baldwin IV leprosy.
He's okay. I mean, he's got like a pretty big intro where he guides you through the initial area. And then again, it's like, I feel that Poppy Playtime with its friendly characters has the same issue that Far Cry villains have, where it's like, you'll see them in the intro, you'll talk to them a lot, you'll get a lot of exposition, you know, the setup, the stakes, and then you never see them again until like the very end of the chapter or the very end of the game. It's like how in Far Cry 3 or 4 or 5, you'll see these characters, maybe, you know, you'll have Pagan Min in Far Cry 4 call you on the phone and taunt you. Maybe there'll be a cutscene or you'll briefly hear one of the characters talk to you in an event or something, but there's nowhere near as much screen time compared to, as always, the beginning of the chapter and then the very end. This seems to be a huge problem with pacing with video games in general, because again, if games like Far Cry have the same issue, it is definitely a pacing problem. But again, it's like, you know, Far Cry is an open world game. There's a reason why that disconnect can happen. It can be player choice, because I mean, when I do a Far Cry game, for example, like a moron, I just do all the side content first because I want to min-max. And also, usually side content can maybe sometimes end up being better than the main content. Definitely not with Ubisoft games, but you know, I just want to go for 100%. But a single player, linear, non-sandbox game should really not be having this kind of pacing issue, I think. And also, apart from Giblet or Giblet, you've got Chompkins. Okay, look, I don't really have any criticisms of this guy. He has to be Big Chungus, right? Like they modeled this guy off Big Chungus. His name is Chompkins. He has the exact same model as Big Chungus. Someone donated that to me on stream, and I basically had a mental breakdown about it.
Big Chungus. Chum on our plan.
He actually... You can't be saying that. You can't be making... You timed that shit! No, you timed that dono. I know you did. There's no way. You opened up the dono link, type that in, put your PayPal in. You were sitting on that for like 10 minutes waiting for that cutscene.
I will get into the prototype in a second, but one thing that I've noticed that is absolutely egregious about Chapter 5 is Lemon. The lemon that you find that was basically a bit. It was this Easter egg you could find, and you could take him through the entirety of the game. I did this in Chapter 4. It was basically impossible to. I had to cheese and exploit the game to get him to the end. Was there an award? Was there an achievement? No, there was nothing. But at least I had the ability to brag that I carried that lemon throughout the game, even though I was basically handicapping myself one whole hand to use. In Chapter 5, you can find the lemon.
Oh! Oh! Please say the line, Bart. Oh my god, he's the goat. The goat is back.
And then 2 minutes later, you can drop him off at this one point, and it plays a CG5 song on the speaker.
Lemon, come here. Lemon. Holy, there's more of them. It's got like a whole family here. Oh. Who made that song? Is that fucking CG5?
CG5 basically being BB No Money, but the FNAF people. That was a joke. That was a joke. I am not allowed to judge music artists. My entire playlist consists of video game music, Machine Girl, Death Grips, and Blade. So I will never criticize a music artist ever again, okay? I am literally looking at my Spotify playlist right now, and it's Echo 2K, Blade, and Aphex Twin. So yeah, okay. I'm not allowed to criticize any music artists, all right? I take that back. But you can still pick up the lemon, and you think to yourself, okay, maybe we can do it again. Maybe we can carry the lemon throughout the entirety of the game. You can't. There is no way to cheese it, because what happens at this particular scene is there's a cutscene that transports you when Big Chungus like VODS you. It transports you to a brand new chapter where it resets your inventory.
You better have gave me the lemon back, bro. Like, we're gonna have real issues if I lost the lemon. Oh! Where's it go?
So no, that is the most game-breaking thing for me. The fact that you cannot take the lemon through the entirety of the game. The fact that this lemon that you could take all the way through Chapter 4, and then 5 minutes later you can drop him off for an Easter egg and a cool little YouTuber song, but then you can't even take him across the entirety of the game. That's the deal breaker for me. Now, getting into the prototype, I think the design is phenomenal. I really do think it was overhated. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter and stuff do their own kind of fan art and interpretations. Someone even actually drew the prototype doing the I show speed face. Like, I get it, it looks like Evil Pomni. I understand that. Also, because I'm deeply mentally ill, I also have my own Jester character, so I get it, okay? It's a cool kind of concept to have. And the prototype reveal cutscene, you can tell there's been a lot of polish put into this to the point that it actually switches to a pre-rendered cutscene. You can actually see when it goes from gameplay to cutscenes, the quality kind of dips a little bit, almost like how other games would do this. A good example is Deus Ex Human Revolution. That game would have cutscenes, and you could tell the quality drop because it wasn't actually rendered in real time. It was kind of just like a pre-rendered MP4 that they stuck into the game, because obviously there's so much going on here.
You all set here? Because the sooner we take off, the better it will be for everyone.
I'm ready.
Great. Then let's get airborne.
The design's really cool. I love the huge kind of spider body when it's kind of like, its entire body is like leaning over the table. You can just kind of see how massive it is. I also love the fact that the prototype is a mimic as well. That's why it has a collection of different voices. It doesn't have an original voice. It's basically stolen everyone else's voice around it. So, and I love the trope where you have like an evil character, or just a character in general, that has like both a male and a female voice kind of overlapping onto each other. I've always thought it just sounds so cool and sinister. There was this claymation film called The Adventures of Mark Twain, and in the film the characters meet basically Satan, and during this they had the option of making Satan just this huge hulking behemoth. I've seen it before, like South Park Satan, that kind of thing, but instead it's just this faceless figure that has like an opera mask on to emote from, and it doesn't really have that much personality. It's voiced simultaneously by a man and a woman, and I think a direction like that for a villain is so much more chilling because you don't really have anything to relate to it. It's too confusing.
People are of no value. We could make more sometime if we need them.
I've always thought the aesthetic of having a character that can't be identified to be really cool. Like, I get it. I'm mentally ill. Every character I have that isn't furry is usually a character with like some kind of like helmet on, mask on, hazmat suit, like a masked character. There's probably something going on in my head. But a good example I can think of as well of like dehumanizing something is there was this film that came out with Keanu Reeves. Very good. It was animated, A Scanner Darkly. It was done pretty much all in rotoscope, which is where they'll film something and then draw over everything like scene by scene. And in that film, police were given something called scramble suits, which were these suits people would wear that would constantly shift identities to random people hundreds of times a second. So they were basically impossible to ID by the naked eye and also by CCTV. And it would also scramble their voice as well.
If you saw me on the street without the suit on, you'd probably say, there goes a total dope fiend.
And despite the fact the prototype being hyped up, having a really cool design, the entire encounter is just zero. Again, it's this revolving door of seeing things happen and not being directly involved. Like there's this cutscene, you're all sat down at this dinner table. The most notable bit is, of course, Lily Lovebraids being bitch slapped in the face.
Shall we see what you look like?
Wrong side out.
Don't touch him.
But then you don't do anything. Kissy Missy grabs the prototype, rips out part of its wiring or whatever, and you see like all this gas go everywhere. The gas that has usually been killing you in other games, but it doesn't really seem to do anything here. Even when you're given the objective to run, you can just happily wait around and nothing seems to actually happen.
Where's Poppy? Where are you counting down?
And then the final encounter with the prototype, this huge boss fight that's been hyped up basically since chapter 1, definitely chapter 2.
Poppy, come
Just looking at me like, yeah. Make sure you get me looking good for the YouTube thumbnail. Okay, I'm gonna kill you now.
It's just, again, running away, but now you're on a train. And then when you go through the train, it tries to stab you through the roof and through the walls. And it becomes so predictable, you can literally see a pane of glass and think, okay, I need to move forward to it just enough to bait it and then move back, and there's no risk. Or look at the roof panels and go, oh yeah, look, it's going to stab me through that next box-shaped hole. I'm going to just bait it and then go back. Like, there's no urgency here at all. The gas is another problem I have with this chapter. It was introduced, I think, mostly in chapter 3 with Catnap, how it slowly, I guess, drives you insane or it kills you. It's some kind of toxin. And that had urgency. But in chapter 5, it doesn't make sense how dangerous it is. It either kills you immediately or kills you never, only to kill you when you get rid of it. I mean, a great example here is one time in the chapter, I had to break through a window to get into this room that is flooded with gas, right? I touched the window and then I immediately died straight away, which, okay, fair enough. You're making the example here that this stuff is bad. It's going to kill me.
There's no way that was the death. We are having a little laugh right now.
But then on the train with the prototype, there's this gas that floods the room that you have to get rid of. I couldn't find the valve. I was panicking like a moron. Found it last minute. Turned the gas off, despite it taking about 5 to 7 business days to even do anything. And then the gas killed me anyway, even after it was drained out of the room.
Oh, that was it? Okay. What?
But yeah, with the prototype, you basically just run away from it like everything else. I guess the most you interact with is freezing it in place, which is one of the new upgrades you get in the game. It's this hand that can basically take elemental abilities from walls. Very similar to, I guess, like Bioshock plasmids, but you don't use them for combat at all. There's a fire one to burn Lily's hair, and that's basically the only time it's used. There's this freeze one that can freeze this goo in place from the poppy glue, and then you can, you know, destroy it. And then there's an electricity one, which is just a really boring way of powering doors. Again, powering doors seems to be a huge cope with this franchise. You know, you'll wrap your arm around a pylon and then you'll hit something. I feel like, if anything, if the puzzles weren't in these games that give you next to no hand-holding to the point that you basically have to figure it out yourself, these games would not be 3 to 4 hours long. They would be like an hour and a half max. I get it. The puzzles are meant to be palate cleansers. They're meant to, like, you know, bring you down back to baseline so we can hit you with some lore, or, you know, so it's not just chase, lore. Like, you need some downtime in between. But some of these puzzles they just feel, you know, you walk into a room and then just be like, oh, great, now it's a puzzle. And then your dopamine just absolutely tanks. There are some nitpicks I have with Chapter 5 as well. Like, on their own, they seem like absolutely nothing. Why even bring them up? But if you accumulatively add everything together, you do start to notice there's a bit of a problem. I mean, a good example is you'll find keys throughout the game, right? These are a huge thing to make progression. Again, we've had this shit since like the original Doom game, so it makes total sense. But you'll get keys to open doors, but the doors are like fire escape doors that you push with a big bar. They have no visible keyhole. It doesn't make any sense.
That's amazing. Like, so you unlocked that door with a key, despite the fact it has no keyhole. It's a fucking fire exit door. You could have opened it from day one.
Another upgrade you get for the hand as well is this pressure hand, which seems pretty cool initially. It's like, you know, well, it's just a pressurized hand. You can place it on something and then apply pressure, which can help push stuff away. It can help break glass. It can hit pressure pads that are exclusive to that hand. I really wish I feel like the developers could have had a chance here to turn this into some kind of a defensive tool in the same way that the flare gun was a defensive tool in, like, you know, Chapter 3, but it just wasn't really utilized in that way. Instead, they add these pressure points that you could have never hit beforehand. So I guess we're incredibly lucky to have never seen these pressure pads before in Chapter 1, 2, 3, or 4. They're now just like being retroactively implemented, like they're part of the facility, just to make this new hand have any kind of meaning. And then there's another hand you get as well. There was like a jump pack I think you got in the earlier chapters, but again, because you lost your whole suit, you now get this hand that you can find exclusive bits of railing that you can grab, and it, like, you know, drags you over there. Like it doesn't change. You're not reinventing the wheel or anything. It's just like another way of traversal, I guess. Like, okay, sure, I'll take it. It's like, imagine white gel in Portal 2, where you could use it to place a portal and traverse anywhere. It's kind of like that. It's just, it's another means of getting from point A to point B. One thing that Poppy Playtime loves to do is dump lore. I mean, obviously there's a few cutscenes of characters talking. Basically, a lot of it is optional reading material. There are audio tapes you can listen to, which are always appreciated. There are videotapes as well that actually have visual things on them, not just a still image, thankfully. But most of it is notes. I think in Chapter 5, which is about 5 hours long, there's about 35 different notes in the entire game, which is a lot. That's a lot of individual papers to be picking up and reading. I actually got fatigued at one point reading all of it, to the point that my chat was basically comparing me to Rakai, who's known on Twitch as the worst reader imaginable.
Life here is so contained, so focused on the work and end goals that have no time at all for a personal life. Door at Fox, that's so annoying. Holy shit. Start by doing at a smaller scale. That was hell.
There were other moments as well, like, for example, when there was like a coded door and you could just hit random buttons and eventually you could brute force it and open the door. Again, I'm not sure if this was intended or not, because it is a sequence, and when you get the wrong button, it does make an error sound, so it kind of just turns into trial and error. I'm not sure if there's an actual solution apart from just brute forcing it. You know, it just feels like you're on autopilot in some of these sections.
There's no way. There's no way. Wow. Wow. Anyways.
One thing I do like about this franchise is when you meet characters that aren't inherently hostile, it's refreshing. It's like, you know, when you play a horror game and then you bump into a friendly character, there's that sense of like, okay, I'm not completely on my own. But, you know, Poppy here, I know Kissy Missy just doesn't ever speak and that's part of her character, but Poppy was meant to be a pretty big kind of lore character, right? She's integral to the plot for very obvious reasons, because she's the daughter of, you know, someone very integral to the plot. Again, I'm sure you know. But here, she just feels like a quest giver. Like, even when you would walk back and forth, she would just have the same dialogue again and again. Like, are we getting out of here? Are we going to leave soon? It's like you've reduced this character that had a lot of dialogue talking about themselves and the state of Playtime Co. and what the world's like to just
come here, person. I need to give you a quest that'll give you 5 XP.
Did you find a way to free us yet?
No.
Did you find a way to free us?
Shut up!
Found anything?
Oh my god, shut up.
Please.
Shut up! I don't know what that was.
Did you find a way to
Oh my god. Make her shut up, bro. Please make her shut up.
Found anything?
I'm gonna break you out just so I can kill you.
And then obviously chapter 5 ends up with you being captured and then being dropped into the poppy gel. So could you become into a toy yourself? Who knows? And then at the very end as well, which I'm sure you've seen, Markiplier having a crash out because you find out that Dr. Sawyer is still alive. And one of the things that, again, perfectly sums up this game is it says to press any button to continue on this computer, and then it says press the E key.
It's any key and it says the E key. Dude, even he's done with the game. Even he's done with it. Look at him. Look at him! He's so done with it all!
Look, dude, you could have worked around this so many different ways. You could have locked the character onto the computer and then just have them press any key. You didn't need to have it be the E key. Again, that is a perfect encapsulation of this entire game and how you just feel like for most of it, you're on rails. You're watching things happen and feeling like you're not having much involvement. It's just going from A to B. I mean, Markiplier even said he doesn't believe that he's going to continue with playing Chapter 6 because, you know, the game has just become such a slog to go through.
This was a fucking mess. Here's an interesting character. Gone. This character's injured. Gone. This character's interesting to be around you for a bit. Gone. And in a chase sequence, as I've said before in these games, as soon as you die, it loses all of its value. Enough! I don't think that I am going to play the 6. I truly just don't want to, so I'm not going to. I don't know how many more fucking chapters they're gonna go through, but hey, more power to you. I hope it's better next time. I won't know, because I'm not gonna play it.
And then Queso, the man most notably known for going, "Oh my goodness! Yo, thank you, Lily, for the 5 gifted." He also agreed with Mark's opinion. He basically said the gameplay is just filler until a new cutscene or monster shows up. I feel like a lot of the hate directed towards Markiplier is because people like the characters, they like the designs, they like the lore. None of this is what Markiplier was criticizing. He was criticizing the gameplay loop that this franchise has built itself off. Now, one thing that's interesting is Isaac Christopherson, who actually directed chapters 1 to 3, he recently did a Q&A after the game came out and, you know, explaining why this chapter felt so different from other ones. He actually said that in his eyes, the original story was meant to end after chapter 5, which is even more confusing because we're still going. We're still having each chapter end with a cliffhanger to set up the next chapter for then it to end at a cliffhanger to then set up the next chapter. He even said that the prototype that was created for chapter 5 was very different from the one that they planned. Apparently, he was meant to be very similar to the Catnap Shrine. He said that there was never actually a final design in his eyes that was finished, but some of the fan art that he found online was pretty close to it. Basically, a more kind of rugged, you know, worn version of the prototype that we find in chapter 5. And also on the prototype as well, I didn't mention this earlier, but again, I love the design. I think it's great. I'm biased, obviously, but it's like you have this monster that's been stealing other monsters' body parts to hype up how powerful it's going to become, but then you see it and it's just 3 arms. You'll see like Huggy Wuggy's arm or like Kissy Missy's arm, and then the Elastigirl, I'm just going to call her Elastigirl, you'll see her arm on the front of the body. That's it. And I feel like none of it's even really used that much for a gameplay perspective because he uses his claws that he used anyway to kill the other creatures. I guess you can say as well, the red gas that it emits is what it got from when it killed Catnap. But at the same time, like, it doesn't really use that apart from a scripted cutscene that you don't really have any control over anyway. And then Isaac actually says that certain characters like the Outermals, Chum, you know, Big Chungus, and Giblet are actually brand new characters. And only Lily Lovebraids, Gracie, had some early concept designs when he left the team. And he also said that the personality, the prototype in his vision before later iterations were made was meant to be very, very intelligent. And also he would never speak as he knew he was the bad guy. Basically saying that, you know, he thinks everything he's doing is right. So overall, I did enjoy the game. I am invested in the series. Probably not as much as the average user on Twitter, but I think to blindly hate on the game and say it's trash and it's garbage is really unfair. But also for people that are saying that they've got genuine fatigue from just doing the same thing and going through this revolving door of characters, that's also completely valid because I'm feeling the same as well. And it does seem that Mob Games have already heard people criticizing the game because they've actually put out a statement saying that they're now looking for a senior game designer with deep horror experience to craft like a tense atmospheric, psychologically engaging gameplay system. And they even reference, if anyone's had gameplay experience with Alien Isolation, which is an amazing game, probably a bit too long. Soma, one of the best written horror games and definitely frictional games best work. Amnesia: The Dark Descent and Dead Space. Dead Space is interesting because although the story isn't groundbreaking or anything, that was loved mostly for its gameplay, which Poppy Playtime doesn't really have anything in that aspect of fighting back the monsters apart from, ooh, flare gun, or, ooh, you know, I'm gonna freeze the ground that you're on so you can't move for a couple of seconds. Like, I get it, that's what they're going for, but being able to fight back in some later chapters, this feeling of escalation would be so cool. I actually found one of the letters on stream as well that made a joke about like having a hand attachment that gave you a gun. And then the note basically said, are you a fucking idiot? Like, these people are so overworked and you want to give them a gun attachment. It was almost like kind of a self-aware note of like, this is why there aren't guns in the game. I thought that was kind of funny.
Gun hand. I mean, that sounds cool. First, a pox on whoever came up with this travesty of a name. Second, you are seriously going to give a bunch of overworked and severely underpaid 9-to-9ers a gun hand. Let's think about this.
So that's my opinions on Poppy Playtime Chapter 5. I don't know if I'll ever do a video again like this that isn't just talking about drama slop, but I thought it was interesting to give my thoughts about it. Mob Games, please let me voice a character in the next game. That's the only reason I made the video. Thank you.